All right, so today we are going to start JavaScript from scratch. So we are getting deep dive into JavaScript and we'll learn all the code fundamentals like variables, conditional statements, loops, functions, and we'll try to come up with some example to understand those things. All right, guys. So introduction to the JavaScript again, like JavaScript is going to be executed in web browser, and for that we have HTML file. Along with the HTML, we are also executing JavaScript as we did like in our last session. So we have the HTML file ready, and in that we also have the JavaScript at the bottom in script tag. So we are executing JavaScript along with the HTML, and after that we have to understand the client and server model, where JavaScript lies in client side, and backend programming languages like Python that lies at server side. So JavaScript is also a client side scripting language, and for JavaScript we generally create a .js file, and we can also keep the code directly inside the HTML. But in actual projects where we have lots of JavaScript lines, in that we create .js file, and we'll try to make it reusable for all the other HTML files. So guys, variables basically it stores some value in our program. Whenever we are required, we can store values in variables, and we can retrieve. So in yesterday's session we have the variables examples. So for creating variable there are like three different ways. One was like where to do, and let's start a new file for variables again. Like I'm going to create a new file, javascript dot html, and I'm going to use the boilerplate where we'll get all the head and body tags ready. So here we will start with JavaScript. So the concepts we are going to cover today is variables, data types, conditional statements, that is nothing but if and else, loops, functions. Let's try. So we are right now in the variable section, where we know how to define a variable as per our previous session, but let's try var name is equals to Adam. It's one of the way of defining variable, where we can use var when whenever we are required to change the value. So it's flexible, it's updatable, it's modifiable. Whenever we want, we can change it to something else, like name is equals to Sam. So it won't be creating any error while we are using same variable name, and we are again initializing. So whenever I just type var before name variable, it's creating another name variable with same name. So if I try to print the value using console.log, it will be printing the updated value, whereas if I print it here, it will be printing name, and that is Adam, and here it will be printing Sam, right? So the another way of variable is, the first one is var. So we need to remember these three things, var. Second one is let. So the thing with the let is we can define any variable with a name only one time in the program. We cannot again define like this. So var keyword I'm using twice, but for let I cannot define the same name twice. So let id is equals to 1, or you can say let any variable id must be unique, right? So let's say let class is equals to 1. It's just a variable, whatever it may be. So I cannot redefine the same variable. So equal to 1. So with this we'll try to run the file and let's check the browser. So there won't be any content over here. So for checking the JavaScript execution, all I have to do is inspect. And here we have to go to console, and we got like two errors over here. One is class number has already been declared. So class number has been declared already, so that's the reason I cannot use let again. But if I remove let, the error will be gone. So as you can see, there is no error there. Why? Because I am already declaring the same name, and again I cannot use let over here, but I can update the value. Let's say I can make it to 2 like that, and if I try to console the value, it will be printing the updated value. Alright, so let's check. So we are getting the updated value, but we cannot redefine using same name. So that's the case with let. So maybe I can write the main point over here. We cannot reuse the same variable name, and the third one we got is const. So const variable, as we have some flexibility with let, that is at least we are able to update the value, but with the const we cannot even update the value, or we cannot even use the name. So in this case id again. So id, I've created a variable called id, and I'm trying to update the variable id, and intentionally I'm trying to create an error. Id is equals to 3, and let's see what's the error. So assign to const variable, so we cannot change the value. As you can see, I'm trying to update the existing variable to 3, that is not allowing me, and even if I try to use the same name, id has been already declared. So these kind of errors will be there. So make sure, like, if you are using id, then it should be in a constant variable. The name itself says that the id is going to be constant throughout the program. So we cannot change the value. We cannot so that's what we have in variables. So we can see there are three types of defining variables: var, let, and const. Right, so there are some variable declaration conventions. For that we have our variable name should be having letters from A to Z and capital A to Z, where it can also have underscore and dollar sign. Other than that, any special characters are not allowed. And after one letter we can have digits. So for defining for something like first person, if you wanted to define a variable such that you are having first at the beginning, then it will be creating a error like that. Okay, so for that either you can use underscore before that, it will be solving your issue. Right, so we cannot use for the number at the beginning. And the JavaScript variables are case sensitive. So there are two variables where name is equals to Adam, and where name is equals to Adam. So there you can see there are like some changes in our convention, name and name. So these two letters are having different values. So maybe different memory locations. So if we update name, and the name with the small letter will be still there. So it's case sensitive. These two variables are different variables. Data types. So data types are like having used of already string variables. So here we can see we have already implemented string. There are like different kind of values we can store into variables. One of them was like string, which we have used, and another one is like integer. which represents a number, and string represents is represented in double quotation. So there are like multiple other data types. So majorly we have numbers, arrays, objects, and strings. So let me show you. So the first one we have got is integer, right? So number, we can also say number. So for number we have so we can represent the value like this. So if you want to represent any value within double quotation, that is nothing but string. String can also have numbers like this. So in some cases, like roll number, roll number is equals to like this. Like if we are getting, you know, numbers along with the digits, so characters. Now we have the array, and for array we can add more than one value. So if you wanted to add the data, if you wanted to add the roll number of like of more than one student, so what you can do is like you can create an array. So you don't need to manage roll number 1, roll number 2, roll number 3, like that. You can simply say var students is equals to, and you can add all these things in one array. So it's holding all the variables, and it also provides us multiple functions to manage the array. So like removing, adding, searching, sorting, all those stuff. So we can keep all the student IDs or related data in an array. And let's try to print array console.log students. So this is how it represents an array in console. And in order to access data from array, what we need to use is indexing. So let's say if I wanted to know what's the first value in array, I can use indexing. Let me show you. Indexing is nothing but it starts from 0. Any array from it starts from 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So there are total 5 items, but it's starting from 0. That's the reason we are indexing stopping at 4. So for getting the value of R1, what I can do is console.log so index 0, we can see there is a value of R1, and I'll try to change it to index 3. So what will be the value in console, guys? So now I'm trying index 3. So for index 3, what do you think, like what will be printed? Index 3 is nothing but student of index 3. That is nothing but R4, exactly. So there are multiple methods of array. We are going to have it in a different sessions, like in order to get length of the array, and in order to remove or sort or all those stuff. So let's complete the data types, and then we can get into the functions, and after the functions we are going to get into the built-in methods. So built-in methods are broadly divided into array methods, dictionary methods, string methods, and all. So hope you understood the concept of array. where we are storing all the items, related items in one place. And let's start conditional statements. Before conditional statements, I think like there are few more data types. Fourth one is object. We also called it as a dictionary. So object is nothing but like we will say one student is having multiple properties. So it's not plural, it's singular. Student has a name, and student has a ID, and student can also have multiple attributes. So the dictionary is representing keys and values, where we can store and access multiple key and value pairs. It's much it's much easy to work with dictionaries. So let's say we don't know the index. If I use the same for let's say using array, if I create a variable called student using an array, I might store Adam, comma, one, comma, all the attributes in a list like this, but we don't know where is the name located and where the ID is, so we are confusing with the index. So if we keep on changing the values of and the sequence of values, will end up creating errors. So for these kind of issues, we use data type, that is object, where no matter where ID is located, we can simply access it by typing student of ID. So let me just show you by accessing it. So console.log students, and student is having ID and name, right? So in order to access any value from dictionary, we have by key, we need to pass the key, and accessing value from object by using a key. So I wanted to get the ID of students, so I'm just passing ID. We can see there is one, and if I wanted to get the name, we can see there is name over there, right? So this is how we pass a key. You can see the syntax over here: student square bracket, and whatever key I'm passing, that is name, it's coming over here and it's returning Adam, right? So this is how we access the values, right? For student array, I'm accessing value using index students of 0 like this. But for dictionary, we are using student of name. So remember this: in dictionary you cannot pass index for the index value like this. For dictionary we are passing a key, and for array we are passing index value. Apart from these data types, we also have the boolean and the float, which we can see like var status is equals to true, like this, or false with lowercase, right? So the boolean data type we generally use in conditions, like in order to direct our program. So we are getting a boolean value over here. Alright guys, so like these are major data types, and apart from this, like it also have some built-in data types like undefined. It's also a data type. Let's say var x, I just created I declared a variable, I haven't assigned any value to it. So for that, if I just say console.log x, it says undefined. That means like it does not have any value yet. In other case, like if I wanted to access the index position which is not existing in students, let's say students of, I'm trying to access the value, index value, which is not existing. Let's say I'm trying to access 5, which is not there. So that will also return undefined like this, and it's returning undefined. And also for this, it's same with the dictionary. If I pass any key which is not existing, it will return undefined. So undefined is also called as a data type. Right, guys? So we are done with data types. So uh, let's go ahead. And we also have like basic description over here. Data types of different data types. We can see object, arrays, and loops. So let's start with the loops. Are you clear with the data types? And if you have any doubts, you can clear the things right away. So let's start loops. So let me show you a basic example of loop that is having three things within these parentheses. So the first one is with condition, the initial point. Here exactly the loop starts, and x is equals to 0. It can be x equal to 5 or x equal to something, but we start the loop from 0, and then x, we are having any we have one condition, x less than, let's say, 5, and this is nothing but condition, and we are separating these three statements with semicolon. As you can see, x equal to 0 semicolon, x less than 5 semicolon, and then the final thing is we are having to increment the value. So for each loop the value of x need to be updated, right? So x plus plus, and then the parenthesis. We can also increment, the double plus is called as increment. We can also decrement like that. So these three things are there: x equal to 0, x less than 5, x plus plus. So now what I can do is I'll try to console this one, console.log x. So you can see it's automatically managing the variable x, it's incrementing it. We don't need to write specifically like x is equals to x plus 1. It's automatically incrementing the value, and loop is running 5 times and getting the value, right? So the basic agenda of a for loop is whatever recurring task is there, we don't want to write the code for it again and again. We can just write it inside the parenthesis. So loops in any programming language is used with the primary objective to execute the same code over and over again, each time with a different value, right? So let's say whether I wanted to print the value hello 5 times. So we can see there is a value which is getting printed 5 times. So let's have a use case of for loop. So for we generally loop through a data, so looping on data of type array. So let's copy the array from our students. So while I'm looping, I can access one student at a time. So you can see I'll try to loop through the students array. For that I am having the for loop, but the index, the end of loop will be the index or the length of the array. So we want all the students from the array, so that's the reason I'm not specifying 5 over here. How many students we have got in the array, we can just access it by typing student dot length. This will be returning 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So there are 5 students, so we will be getting that number over here, and then we can try to access the student. So how we are trying to access the value from array? As I said, we are passing index, and if you see in the terminal there was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 getting printed in place of x. So x is nothing but 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the variable x is nothing but it's starting from 0 going through our through the list, and it's updating the value. So in order to access any any value from the array, we have to pass index value, right? So I'm just passing x instead of typing 0 1 2 3. In every loop the value of x will be changed, that is 0 1 2 3, and you can see we are able to access one item at a time, so one student at a time, right? So a list can also have a dictionary inside it. So generally, let's create another use case of a student. So where students, I'm making it a bit complex so that we'll have a better example. So there are multiple students, student ID 2, student ID 3, and 4. So there are like 4 students in array, and I'm looping through it again. So I don't need to do anything. I can simply copy the same for loop, and below here I'll run this for loop on students. So you can see that we are able to access one student at a time, and if I want to perform any action on any student, let's say I want to check what is the name of ID number 4, where the ID is equal to 4, what is the name of that student. For that we use conditional statements, but before that I'll show you while we are looping through it how we can access one key, right? So let's take name, oh sorry, it's double quotation name. So that's it. We can see for each dictionary I'm also retrieving name, so Adam Adam, Sam Sam, right? So but now I don't want to retrieve each and every name. I have a conditional statement over here, right? I don't want to print the value of each and every student. I just want to print the value of a particular student. So for that I can say if x of ID, I'm searching a student with the ID 4, right? So here we have if x of ID equal to 4. So this is nothing but my condition. So here you can see it's a condition where if this condition is getting satisfied, that means if this thing is true, then the code within these curly braces will be getting executed. Okay, so now I have kept one condition which will be checking for each and every loop, and if this condition satisfied, then only we'll be getting the result. So now we didn't got any value. So because the way of accessing ID is different, so how I have accessed the name, the similar way I have to type if students of x of ID equal to 4. This is how we are able to access. So students of x of ID, and we are checking value 4. So as you can see, the value of 4 is only getting returned in the terminal. So we can also type 3. You'll be getting at the index position, not index position, ID equal to 3, which is David. Or you can also check name. Let's say you know the name but you don't know the ID. So you wanted to know what is the ID of Mark. Okay, so you can see Mark is having ID equal to 4. So this is how we use conditional statements. So conditional statement has multiple other things. Let's say I'll just create a value called var x equal to 5. Now I'm checking the condition. If x is less than 10, then do something. And we also have the else condition. Okay, so the else condition will be executing if the first condition is false. So now right now in our case x is less than 10, then this code block will get executed, and after this code block we'll directly jump, we don't execute else, and we directly jump to the next line. Okay, So let's try to console something. Console.log x is less than 10. For else x is not less than 10. So we can see x is less than 10. Now the condition will be same, and using conditional statement, we are executing some code in else, right? So this is nothing but we are directing our program whether to go in this direction or this direction, whether to perform this action or not, like that. So the value of x will be changed any time, like we can say 11 over here. This time x is not less than 10. The second condition is getting executed, that is x is not less than 10, right? So this is how we control the direction of program. That is also called as control structures. If else, so we can see we can also check multiple other conditions. So this is a basic if and else, and we'll see else if. So how we are checking else if? So if this code block is not getting executed, else is compulsory, else is getting executed. But before getting into else part, we want to further check few more values, whether x is equals to 10, and after that I want to check one more value, else if, and then finally else. So else if, it will come into the second statement if the first statement is false. Else if x is less than 15, then we can say x is less than 15. Finally I'll say x is $15. Okay, so there are three conditions over here. One is if x is less than 10, and x is less than 15, and else. So let's check which one is going to print the value. So right now the value of x is 11. So what do you think, guys? Which one will be getting executed? If, else if, or else? The value of x is 11. So what will be the statement printed in console? Can you guess? Else if block, exactly. So because this condition is getting executed directly, will be it will be terminating else block and will not get this one and this one in terminal, will just get the less. So let's try. So x is less than 10, and again whatever we are printing we need to update it, right? So the second case is x is less than 15, and the last output in terminal, here you can see x is less than 15. Or if I just say x is equals to 10 or 9 now, you'll be able to see x is less than 10. So what happens is it started over here, and if x is less than 10, then this code block got executed and all the other blocks are terminated. So that's why we are not getting these two values. So it's all about conditional statements. So we are going to use it again and again in each and every program, so you'll be easily grabbing the concept even if you're having any doubts. So it's like more frequently used, so you don't need to worry about it. So just remember if, else if, and else, and with the purpose why we are using it. If we have multiple conditions, we use else if, and at the end if we want something to be executed, we can use else, right? So we are done with loops and we are done with conditional statements and data types. Now it's time to implement something by using all these concepts. I'm going to use loops, I'm going to use conditional statements, and I'm also going to use functions. And using these three concepts we are going to build a chatbot, right? So there is a basic example of chatbot I'll show you, which will not have any user interface, but it will have something going on in the terminal. So let's create a function first for that. So function, for declaring function, we have the keyword function, and let's create a function which is doing something for us. So there are like multiple statements, and let's say it's also doing something like where. It's also printing the value of time. So new date. So like these are multiple statements I want to execute whenever I call say hello function. So let's see whether these statements are getting printed in terminal. Oh no, there is nothing printed over the in the terminal. Why is it not printing anything, guys? I have created a function which has like three console.log statements, but it's not printing anything. Why? Because like whenever we create any function, we have to call it. So it's called as declaring. We have defined a function, and here we are calling. So we are calling the function in order to execute these code blocks. So until and unless we call the function, it won't be executing. So you can see, hey, welcome back. You have logged in at this particular date time, right? So if I call the same function multiple times, you can see I'm getting the same result three times. So hey, hi, welcome back, and these three results, right? So there is like very small time which is difference in all these things, that is like even uh, less than the millisecond. So we can see there is no change in the time. It's very quickly getting executed. But this is how we make our code reusable. So the agenda of using functions is the same. So there is some graphical representation for conditional statements, starting and checking the value if it is executed with the conditional true, and functions. Now functions, basically it's a process where we are passing some input. It's executing the code, generating the output, and returning back. So one example we have already used is hello, and if we want to you know pass the name also, we can try the same thing. So functions are block of code that makes the code reusable. Functions are declared using function keyword, and after that we have three things to remember in function. One is define, one is four things actually. One is calling, and the third one is passing parameter. In other words, it's also called as arguments. So if we want to pass any argument to function, let's say function add, I'm passing two arguments in order to let's use the same function first. Let's say hello. I'm creating passing parameters is having something like say hello name, and here I don't want to mess with existing function, so we'll create another function say underscore hello, and here I'm passing a name, and it's simply executing the code based on that parameter. Whatever parameter we are passing, based on that it's going to execute. So hello and name, and passing parameters are after declaring function where it's having the placeholder name. I'm calling the function say hello, and passing a name, and let's check. So you can see here, hello Adam, right? So passing a parameter. And one more thing you need to remember is the variable name over here, it's called as formal parameter. Okay, the it's simply, uh, we don't know like whether it's returning, whether we are going to pass Adam, Sam, or David. Whatever you are going to pass, you can pass, but I'm going to call it as a name. So throughout the function says that whatever value you are passing, I will treat that value with this variable name, and now you can pass whatever you want. So you can see hello Sam. So function is creating its own variable and treating that, and the one which we are passing here, it's called as actual parameter. Okay guys, formal parameter, actual parameter. We can pass more than one parameter like this. So we can pass two. The second one is some number, and we can also access the variable num like this. So the second parameter I'm passing is 2, and it's treating it as num. Whatever we want, we can make it x, or we can do anything with that. So we can use like any variable name. So we can see that we are able to access the second parameter, that is having a placeholder x there. So for formal parameters and actual parameters, the last thing which we need to understand in function is return. So we have defined a function, and we have called it, and we have passed some arguments. Now in some case we want our function to return something by performing some actions. Let's say I'll create one addition function which will return a value after adding two numbers. So function add, and I'm passing two parameters. The function is expecting two parameters, two numbers, right? One is x and y, and uh, I'm creating a variable called total, which is nothing but x plus y. And after performing certain action, I'm returning the value, return total. All right, guys. So in order to save the value of total, let's say var z is equals to var z is equals to 5 plus 4, and I'm passing these two parameters to add function, and now the value of z can be printed. So let's check. Here I just need to pass directly two variables with comma separated. We can see the value over here. So in this case we are having only one line of code to be executed to get the final result, but in actual functions we have like 5 to 10, at least 5 to 10 lines which is generating the final output. So we are passing the parameters, and wherever uh, we want the same code to be executed, we can simply pass the parameter, and we can get the result. So I'm passing some different parameters and getting some value, so making it reusable. This code block is getting executed whenever we are calling it, right? So using these four concepts, we are going to build a chatbot. So I'll show you what's the logic behind it. So creating, firstly we'll create a dictionary where we have each question and answer. Let's say hi, hello, how are you, fine, like that. So each question and already some value present for that answer. And then we are passing a parameter with question. Let's say I'm creating a chatbot which is having a function. example. So the same logic runs, even for the bigger chatbots, which are not like artificial intelligence chatbots, simple chatbots like which are helpful for querying any information for related any business or something. So we can pass a user question and we'll get the answer. So let's create a function called chatbot. So chatbot is expecting one parameter, that is message. So in this case, we are writing data, but in actual program, we don't write hard coded key and value pairs like this. Uh, need to be. So the question and answers are not written directly in JavaScript program. It is present in some other server location where we can modify and we can manage those keys and value pairs anytime. So right now we are creating a variable data, and here let's say, hey, I'm just adding some random key and value pairs to test it. So let's use hi, how can I help you, and then alright. So let's try with these many question and answers, and for that, as I said, chatbot is expecting some message, and we are returning reply. So let's create a variable called reply is equals to data of message. And as I said, for accessing any value from dictionary, we are having to pass key, return reply, and finally we are returning reply. As I said, we are going to combine all the concepts in one simple example, that is chatbot. So created a function, created dictionary, passing the parameter and returning the reply, and now it's time to call chatbot. So now console.log console.log chatbot, and whatever value it's returning, I'm directly printing it to the console. So chatbot of hi. So see the chatbot function, I'm passing hi to chatbot function, and if we can see, there is one key in data, that is hi, and it's returning a value. So hello, how can I help you? Right there, we are getting the value. So chatbot of hey, and you can see how can I help you. So using terminal also, like we can call any function. So I'll type what's the day today, exactly how I have written in question. To make it more intelligent, we'll use some different concepts like see, so the day today is written, right? So are you getting it, guys? So whenever I pass any value which is not there, let's say how are you, what it's going to return, can you guess? It's returning undefined. As you can see, how are you is not present there, but who are you is there, right? Who are you, we just need to pass exactly same, but to make it more intelligent, we have some more concepts like we make all the letters to the lowercase chatbot of the key, and then I'm a bot, right? So to make it more intelligent, as I said, we can check the substring, like who are you. We can whatever I have done for making it intelligent is making all letters lower, the message and the key of dictionary to recognize the uppercase and lowercase letters. I have made all the lowercase. Check similarity. So checking similarity of the message sent by user and the key. So there is one function like we use similarity to check. Let's say there are two messages. How are you? Not how are you. Let's say what's day to day, comma what is the day today, and comma simply passing today. So like these three questions, it will identify that these three are nothing but same questions. So similarity, it will identify keywords like this, and it will return a similarity ratio that it these two words are 0.7% similar. Based on similarity ratio, we are going to decide whether it's a same question or not. So generally, we extract the keywords like what's the menu of your business, and like whether you also offer burger, pizza, like whether user wants to query information of any business. So they can pass the keywords, and by identifying the keywords, check substring. So checking substring is like if I simply pass event today, it will return the value. So any single word also from the question can be passed using substring. So at least by passing these three things, without artificial intelligence also our chatbot will be working quite better. But generally we use artificial intelligence, and we perform we send the message to backend, and at the backend we perform some Python code, and then we execute it, right? So that's all for today.